If you have ever been to therapy and wondered why stepfamily life did not improve, this episode is for you. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, stepfamily life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Hello. I have been wanting to do this episode for a really long time because this is a topic that I talk about all the time with stepmoms and with all the experts that I work with. And I want to be clear before we get started that this is not a therapy bashing episode, okay? If you've been listening for a while, you know that I'm in the last bit of my master's in clinical mental health counseling to become a therapist. And I think this work is really, really important. But, a big but, there is a reason that a lot of stepfamilies feel thoroughly unhelped in therapy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's paint the picture here, okay? You go to therapy. Maybe you decided to go by yourself. Maybe you talked your partner into coming with you, but you sat down and you explained to the therapist what's going on in your stepfamily. You've got tension. Maybe it's a kid who won't look at you or who is being overall defiant. Maybe it's the ex. Maybe you just cannot feel at home in your own house. And somewhere in that session, or maybe even afterwards, you felt it. You could tell that you were being heard, but you could also tell that you weren't being understood. And then they gave you suggestions. Maybe, trying family game nights, getting some togetherness in, giving it time. Maybe your partner needs to relax a little. Maybe you need to relax a little. Maybe you need to be patient. If you're having problems with a stepkid acting out, you're a parent now and you're part of the family. You need to enforce your authority. If you have listened to me for any amount of time, you know my feelings on that one, right? And the worst part is you paid for that hour. But I want you to stay with me for just a minute in that therapy room, right? Because what you walked out of there with was some sort of explanation for what's happening in your life. Unfortunately, I think most times it's the wrong one. And here is why. What most of us do with our hour of therapy is we take it home and we think about it. Maybe we apply what they told us to do, and then in a stepfamily situation, maybe that blows up. And then we start to wonder if we're going to see a trained professional, a person with a graduate degree of some sort, with a license and lots of credentials, if they can't get me through this, then I must be a failure, or this just isn't fixable. Now, I know you're not sitting in your car listening to this podcast thinking that you're a bad person. I know you're not thinking that you're broken. I think you're probably thinking, if you're anything like me, what am I missing here? Why is this so overwhelming and chaotic? And why can I not figure this out? What is the thing that everybody else seems to know? What is the trick? Maybe there's one adjustment that I just haven't tried yet. And if you're anything like me, I know I kind of felt like I am the kind of woman who figures things out, but I can't figure this out. And I cannot even tell you how many times I thought that early on as a stepmom. I am a lawyer. I had a very successful career that was built on building relationships and working with all kinds of different personalities day in and day out. And I could not figure it out. And I felt like a failure. Like, what is this that I cannot get? I was confused. I really was like, okay, I feel reasonably smart, but somehow this is eluding me. And if you have ever felt like that, please know that that is a completely reasonable response to being handed advice that does not work for stepfamilies and then being told it should, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that confusion. So we've established it's not you. But here's the part that may surprise you when I say it. It probably wasn't that your therapist was bad, right? I am definitely not telling you to fire your therapist, okay? There is a different explanation here. It's not about your therapist's skill, and it is not about your family. Once you see it, then you get that there's something bigger going on here. Okay. So let's talk about what the research actually says. If you have followed me for any amount of time, you know I'm very evidence and research driven, and there is some great research around this. This week, as I'm recording, a paper came out in a journal called Family Transitions. It's by Todd Jensen, who I've had on the podcast here before. He's also spoken at the Stepmom Summit in the past. He's a researcher at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He and Patricia Pappernow, who I've also had on the podcast and has spoken at the summit and who I cite very often, she has spent decades doing this work. So they co-wrote a paper that is about something called the no-do gap. No, K-N-O-W, right? No-do gap. And that is the distance between what the research knows and what's about stepfamilies and what actually reaches them and how it impacts the professionals trying to help them. So here's what they found, okay? They looked at 8 accredited graduate programs across social work, marriage and family therapy, and counseling in different parts of the country. They went through all the publicly available course listings. Not one of those 8 programs had a single course where the title or description mentioned stepfamilies or step-parenting or blended families or remarriage. Not one course out of 8 programs. Now, Todd and Patricia are careful to say that this was a small look, meant to illustrate the problem, not to prove the whole picture. And I want to be equally careful. But, 8 for 8 is kind of hard to shrug off, right? And I can tell you that I am attending a top graduate program in counseling, and they don't have it either. And I have talked to the administration about it. I've piped up about that. So, maybe therapists pick it up later in continuing education. However, I will say one of the things they also looked at is that the largest marriage and family therapy conference in the country runs hundreds of workshops every year. The number of stepfamily sessions is in the single digits. Same pattern at the big social work, psychology, and counseling conferences. All right. Here's another big one that matters. There is no widely recognized stepfamily credential for professionals at all. There's no certification that a therapist can go and get that tells you that they know this material. There's one for play therapy. There's one for sex therapy. There's one for addictions counseling. There are certifications for all kinds of specializations. There is not one for the family structure that 42% of American adults are part of. 17% of kids in this country are living in a stepfamily right now. Close to a third will live in one at some point before they turn 18. 40% of couples over 50 are part of one. And if you want to find a therapist who was trained in stepfamily dynamics, there is no letter after anybody's name that will tell you. So let's talk a little bit more about this. Research on stepfamilies didn't really get going until the 1970s. Most graduate training programs were designed before that knowledge existed, and faculty can only teach what they themselves were taught. In the last 5 decades, the field has produced 3 clinical books on working with stepfamilies. 3. Okay? Your therapist is working from what they were given. Nobody gave them this. Now, every field has a lag between what gets discovered and what gets taught. In the health sciences, it runs somewhere around 17 to 20 years, right? That's normal. It's frustrating. It's not usually dangerous. What makes this different is not the length, it's the direction. And that's what we're going to talk about when we get back after this. All right, can I tell you something? As a stepmom, my days are a lot. The co-parenting texts, the schedules, all the emotional labor that nobody sees. So by the time I climb into bed at night, I really need it to feel like I'm exhaling. And that is what my Cozy Earth sheets and pajama set have become for me. They are made from viscose from bamboo, and they're temperature regulating. They actually wick heat and moisture away, so I sleep a few degrees cooler. I am not waking up anymore tangled and overheated at 2 a.m. replaying my day. If you upgrade one thing in your home this year, please start here. There's a 100-night sleep trial, so you can try them risk-free, but trust me, you are not going to send these back. And they come with a 10-year warranty. Head over to cozyearth.com and use my code Stepmom Diaries for up to 20% off. If you get a post-purchase survey, tell them you heard about it right here, because home isn't just where you live, it's how you feel. Comfort lives here. Cozy Earth. So, what makes this different is not the length, it's the direction. In a stepfamily, the right answer often runs opposite to what the right answer is in a first family. We need in a step family to move slowly instead of quickly with relationships with the kids. The parent needs to hold the discipline instead of both adults sharing it. We need to lead with warmth instead of authority. Build the relationship instead of enforcing the rules. Research consistently finds that authoritarian limit setting by a step-parent is actively harmful to the step-parent-stepchild relationship. And in a lot of step families that are doing really well, the step-parent has no discipline role at all. Now, think about what you may have been told to do. Step up, be consistent, present a united front. Get in there and parent. Show your partner you're committed. Set an example of a healthy relationship in front of the kids, maybe with affection. Every single one of those little nuggets is great advice for a first family. And every single one of them, when applied to a step family, is going to make it worse. The researchers describe it as helping professionals working from a first-time family map. You could also describe it as being handed the wrong rule book. Whatever you want to characterize it as, however you want to put it, the instructions are real, they're just for a different game, right? Patricia Papernow, I love this analogy that she uses. She talks about it like going out to LA and trying to navigate the city with a map of Indianapolis. So when you left that therapy appointment feeling worse, or when you tried to apply that advice that blew up on you, you're not imagining it, and you're not being difficult. You've been given advice for a first family. And for your family, it points in the wrong direction. Patricia Papernow writes in the paper that she gets dozens of messages a month from step family members who've been in therapy, who tell her the therapist didn't get it, and who are asking her to please help them find somebody who does. Dozens every month. You are not an unusual case. You are part of a pattern. All right. So what do you do with all this information? I don't want you to leave this episode just feeling validated. I mean, I do want you to feel validated, but that's like a nice feeling. But I want to give you something you can use before your next appointment, right? Or before you book the first one. I'm going to give you 4 questions, and you can ask these in a consultation call, and most therapists will offer you a consultation for free. The first question is, what training have you had specifically in step family dynamics? Not family systems and not couples work. Step families specifically. A good answer will give you something real. They've taken a workshop. They've read a book. They've been to a training. They have a supervisor who has worked with these families. Okay. The second question, do you think a step parent ought to be disciplining kids? This one is my favorite because it's a very fast test and it doesn't sound like a test. If the answer is some version of yes, absolutely, you're a parent in that house, you two need to be a united front, you have learned a great deal from this therapist in about 11 seconds. Okay. A good answer sounds more like, early on, that ought to stay with the parent, and it could shift over once the relationship is solidified. Question 3, how long do you think it takes for a step parent and a stepchild to feel close? If they say a few months, they're working from the wrong map. A good answer is measured in years, and it includes the possibility that close is not the goal for every kid, and that a warm, respectful, non-parental relationship is a real success, not a consolation prize. Okay, the 4th question. Are you familiar with Patricia Papernow, Todd Jensen, or Larry Ganong? And there are a host of other researchers too, but those are the names. If she knows them, she's been reading in this area and she's been doing it on purpose. And I want to be really clear again that I don't want this episode to turn into a reason to fire your therapist. There is an answer that is completely acceptable. And it goes something like this. I have not had specific training in that, but I know step families are different and I would be willing to go learn it. That's a good therapist, right? A good therapist is not one who knows everything. It is someone who knows the edges of what she knows and doesn't pretend she knows anything more. What you're screening for is not expertise. It is the assumption that your family works like every other family. That is what's going to end up costing you. If they're willing to learn it, that is amazing. Give them Patricia Papernow's name and tell them to go buy her book. I will link to it in the show notes, but it's written for clinicians and it will guide them. It is not all doom and gloom for getting information out there. So I want to end on a positive note. Earlier last month, I was in Scotland at the International Association for Relationship Research Conference, and I was presenting a paper that I co-authored with Dr. Bailey Oliver Blackburn, who is another fantastic researcher, and the paper is currently under peer review. But it was about co-parenting between households that hold different values and beliefs, which is a situation that I know you may be living with. A lot of step families are, and almost nobody's studying it. I'm doing things like this for one reason. I want you to know that what I'm telling you is true, that it's evidence-based, that it's not just platitudes, it's not just popular advice, it's not just inflammatory advice like we see on social media a lot, that it's true. And 2 days ago, when the Family Transitions Journal published this Papernow and Jensen paper that I've been talking about during this episode, in the paper, they lay out 9 things that need to happen for this no-do gap to close. One of them is that stepfamily coaching needs to be genuinely rooted in research instead of just somebody's personal opinion or experience. And in that section, they wrote this: a notable exception is Stepfamily Solutions, a fully evidence-based stepfamily coaching program. They go on to credit my advisory board of researchers and clinicians who review our material before any of it reaches you. They also list this podcast, the Stepmom Diaries, as one of the places that research is actually getting to families. I'm not telling you that to brag, although I was really humbled to find myself in that paper, and I'm really proud of what we have built here. I'm telling it to you because it is proof that the standard that I hold my work to is not just some standard that I came up with. It's the one that researchers are asking the whole field to meet. One more thing from that paper, because it is fair and I'd rather say it than have it said about us. They point out that stepfamily coaching is dominated by stepmothers, while a large majority of stepfamilies in this country have a stepfather in them. They're right, and it's a real gap. And honestly, it's one that I would love to see this field close. So here's where I want to leave you. If you have ever sat in your therapist's office and felt that hour go sideways and gone home and then decided you just must be failing, I want you to take that conclusion back. I want you to revisit this. You are not failing. Your family is not failing. You're not missing some big, obvious thing that everybody else has figured out. There's no trick that you have failed to find online. You got instructions for a different kind of family, and then you were judged for the fact that they didn't work. That is not a personal failure. It doesn't mean your family's failing. It's a 50-year gap in the stepfamily field, and it is finally, slowly starting to close. So I've told you what to go ask. I want you to go ask it. Okay. One last thing. The Stepmom Summit is coming up September 14th to the 18th. It is free. This is our 6th annual event. We have supersized it to 5 days. We have got 30 real top of their field experts, the kind of information we just spent this time talking about, how hard it is to find. So go get on the wait list at thestepmomsummit.com. thestepmomsummit.com. And I will make sure once you're on that wait list, you'll know the second that doors will open so you can grab your spot. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but it's thestepmomsummit.com. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week. If this episode spoke to you or touched your heart, would you do me a favor? Take 10 seconds to go and follow the show, leave us a 5-star review, and share this episode with another stepmom who might need to hear it. Your support is going to help grow our blended family community, and you never know whose life you might change.